evening, Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome to another edition of Scoreboard here on ACTN. My name is George, and it's always a pleasure every Tuesday evening to come into your homes where we talk sports. This has been approximately close to 4 months now since the election, so I thought it fit to bring the president to tell us about what's the progress report, to give us a progress report on what has transpired so far for the past 4 months. My guest tonight is Maria Thomas, President of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Rugby Union. Maria, good night.
Hello, George. It's a pleasure to be back here.
Always.
Yes.
As I said, it's been 4 months now, right? So
nearly 4 months.
Nearly 4 months, right? So I thought it fit that, you come on and let the viewing public and also the supporters of the sport know exactly what has been going on, because with all the current lockdown and everything, there's still a lot of confusion as to sports not playing and all the different little things that's happening. So first of all, let me, but viewers, before I go further, I just want to wish our former Trinidad and Tobago World Boxing Champion, Claude Noel, happy birthday. Today's his birthday. So I just want to give shout out to him and give him some bless up. Yes, Maria, what is the progress report you have since your elected presidency?
All right. Well, George is starting out with a very broad question for rugby.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of progress. I'm very, very pleased with how the executive team has been working together. And not only that, but how committees have been coming together and clubs have had people from within their membership volunteer, not only their time and expertise, but also their ideas. So I'm very happy to report that the progress that we're seeing right now is actually a reflection of what people from within the rugby community want to see moving forward. So setting up that framework is really coming from the input from the community.
What are some of the challenges if you're facing right now, but with the COVID restrictions and all of that,
Yes, so of course, for everyone, COVID is definitely causing huge restrictions. We know that we've extended the state of emergency into the next 3 months. We knew that we were coming into this during, the current situation and the environment with COVID. And so we've had a lot of plans that we thought of intentionally because of COVID. So we were able to launch Rugby Hub 868 virtually, and we've actually already done some recordings for the television so that we can watch some rugby on television. So that's one of the projects that we had, keeping in mind that people were mostly housebound. Another project that we have been able to work on is our communication channels. So just making sure that via, whether it's WhatsApp, via social media, via the email chains that we've been using before, and also picking up the phone and making calls, checking in with people, making sure that people are all right, just seeing how they're going and keeping connected as a community. Some clubs have put together care baskets and things like that. When they're aware that someone is in a position where they could use a little bit of outreach, then it's being done within the community, and that's very inspiring.
Okay, so let's just jump ahead. Upcoming fixtures, right? Because I understand that some of the teams, national teams, have been, notified that to start preparing. Let's start with the national team. Who are the teams in what 10s or 15s or under 18s? What are the whole thing going on with the national teams?
All right. So
are they in training?
We've expanded our national team structure. So this is very positive because as far as the technical team, we have more people working together. And of course, when people are mostly inside, it's difficult to see how much work actually goes on behind the scenes. But the technical teams for the national programs have put together online forums. It's gone out as far as sourcing and reconnecting with our national players, increasing our national player pool base. With the competitions that are upcoming, Of course, there are shortlisted athletes based on their previous national team experience and things like that. And the national men's sevens have already begun training. We were hopeful for participating in the RAN sevens in October. However, at the time when we would have had to commit, there are still things that are not in place that we would need to have in place to be able to commit. Understanding that if it is we commit and are not able to attend, there are possible sanctions that would impact our future participation. RAN sevens for 2022 has actually moved up to February. So that is actually a great time space for our teams as far as their training and preparation. We've already been meeting with the EDPU, and they've been very responsive even to our plans, because we have, through our safe return to play and COVID-19 protocol, training looks different. So training is initiated. We use a mix of virtual platform. We have pods for training. So that
So
helps.
you all have no physical training?
The national teams have physical training, but even within that, it's supplemented by online communication and meetings and forums, so that everyone can have access to information more readily. And also there's a pod structure so that we don't have overlap. We're not mixing as many people. We have pods that would train in the areas where those athletes are, so we're not encouraging travel, and we're not encouraging a whole bunch of people gathering together, right? Of course, following the protocol and all of those checks which are in place, but also, of course, for the contact tracing, we're taking every precaution.
So you have the age, I know you have under 18 and different age groups. So who are the age groups that are actually training right now? And you have the national senior team.
In physical training,
the
physical men's sevens team, the senior men's sevens.
Yeah, because their tournament has been brought forward to February, the RAN sevens.
Well, it's a different tournament, but it's RAN sevens for 2022.
And that has been brought.
And that is going to be in February.
In February, so that's around
and that is a qualifier for World Cup, for the regional games. It's a qualifier for more games than the October tournament would be.
So more focus is being placed on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And of course, there are many conversations that happened, not only with the technical teams and here, and finding out what is the time frame for all the things that need to be in place. So part of that is, are we going to secure the balance of the funding that is required in time? Of course, the situation with COVID-19, what are our government's restrictions? What are the restrictions where we're traveling, et cetera, and a lot of the logistics around that. Because we have to remember that we're making a commitment, but we have to commit based on an uncertain environment, right? And of course, prioritizing our players first and foremost. And the opportunity for them to play in February is something that we do not want to compromise. And I had conversations with Rugby Americas North, and as far as, what is the impact that will be had from these tournaments. And it was made clear that of the two tournaments, the February tournament should take priority.
How is the players responding to the training? We have been away for basically nearly a year and a couple of months. How was that,
There's a mix. So, of course, people would have different levels of fitness, and there's a difference between training with a team and having certain assessments that you can mark your progress with, and training on your own. So, actually, I'm very happy to see that there are individual athletes who have done so much work on their own, that they are actually in really good fitness shape and things like that. So that helps our coaches, of course, when they have athletes who have taken it upon themselves during the period to stay ready. As I mentioned before, we are using the EDPU as far as having specific training tailored for our athletes. And one of the things that is really good about the EDPU is they do look at the athlete, right? And the athlete's best personal performance is going to contribute to the team's best performance. And this is incredibly important, especially coming out of a period where we have not had regular training, we haven't had matches, and people were training on their own. It's so important because this is obviously a time where we have to take extra care. And we have to make sure that athletes are closely monitored to make sure that they don't incur injuries. You know, in rugby, we do have basically like a load passport. So to return to play, you know, it's not just, yes, okay, borders are open, people are vaccinated, let's go and play. No, we have a responsibility through player welfare to make sure that our athletes have been trained enough to be ready for that competition. And the EDPU is helping us do that, not only through physical training, but also through their other aspects of their programs.
And I'm guessing here that all the players have went through their vaccination and everybody's up to
So
mark.
that's a process that is still, it's a personal choice that people have to make.
Yeah, that's what I
right?
wanted to find out from you. How is the union going to deal with it to make the national team? Do you take it? Do you don't take it? Then where the tournament is going to be held, if it's requested that every player entering must be fully vaccinated, or you have to go into quarantine for how many days? What is that like?
What you're discussing, George, is something that has the potential to vary with every single tournament and every potential opportunity that our athletes have to play, right? The union has actually reached out. We've been volunteering at mass vaccination sites. We've had athletes participate in that, and thank you very much for the athletes and administrators who have donated their time to volunteering. One, we want to give back to the community, and we want to support the change and the progress that needs to happen for things to resume and for people to live the lives that they want to live, right? Two, it's also good for people to have firsthand information. Everyone is looking at the information they have online, what they're hearing from their friends, et cetera, and is also an opportunity for people to have firsthand information and say, okay, well, this is the process. This is what it looks like. This is how many people are getting vaccinated. Because it's very important. The logistics of travel, whether it's optional or not optional, vaccination is something that is going to facilitate travel and pretty much become necessary. Right now, we can only look at what are the restrictions within Trinidad and Tobago, and to return home as someone who is not fully vaccinated, you're required to quarantine at your own cost for 14 days. So even if you look at that sole cost alone and that time that athletes and our athletes work, right? They have to have a job, et cetera, you know, that's time, 14 days they have to be able to take away from work, plus the cost that they would have to cover for that quarantine process. So it's really looking at those logistics and is it possible?
Well, have you all like put a plan in place from now? Because February is just around the corner, right? And we don't know what is going to take place from this month to February. So how you all intend to deal with this whole
Well, we're
situation?
facilitating vaccination. So through the connections, anyone in rugby, if they want to have a direct link, the sites actually are really, really easy. Everything runs smoothly. There aren't long waits. Sometimes on the first day there.
Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to Scoreboard ACTN. I'm chatting with Maria Thomas, the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Rugby Football Union. Maria, before the break, I was about to ask you, these teams have been selected, right? But what process was used to select the players based on no actual on-the-field training was taking place or screening? How did you all select these players? Was it from past experience on playing for the national teams? How did it go? Especially the 18s, the under 18s, because school was out, you know, community activities was out,
So this is actually an area where we're having a lot of success in the infrastructure that's being put in place. All right, so a selections committee is now in place, and they're doing a lot of work to support the technical teams, the coaches of those teams, right? A selections committee, of course, is there to make sure that there is transparency with the selection process and that everyone has a fair and equal opportunity to be a part of the team, right? So coaches, of course, would have input onto what are their principles of selection. And those things are now being broken down in a way that's very clear for athletes to understand.
Okay.
So that athletes can understand what is expected of them and what it is that they bring to the team and what it is they need to work on if at any given time they are not selected to continue any program, right? So the selection process, of course, past experience is one of the things that, yes, we're leaning heavily on right now as far as how were athletes performing in their schools teams, in their club teams,
Right.
etc.
Yeah.
We haven't been able to view that over the past, year and a half. So we also have to look at not only where the athletes have been, but where they are now. So when the athletes transition from the virtual process of making sure that they've given the information required, attending information sessions, and getting on board with their technical teams, then there's an initial assessment that's done. And that initial assessment is just basically about seeing where are the athletes at this time and what kind of training do they need to move forward with. Remembering that we're being athlete-centered, player welfare is at the forefront. So we have our goals that we want to achieve, absolutely, as teams and as a national program and as a union. But we have to first and foremost take care of our athletes and make sure that we're prioritizing their safety and well-being. All right? So, of course, as you're aware, when you have national teams, the selection process is gradual. As you get closer to competition time, there would be different cuts. And so all of that is factored in. And our coaches, especially as they've the men's sevens has really done a lot of work. They're the pioneers in this pod training where you have people training in ways that are going to be productive as far as what do we need to do as a community to make sure that we are not contributing to the spread of COVID, right? Even though, yes, vaccine, that's the first thing to do. But even with that, we still have to be cautious and we still need to make sure that we're taking those precautions. And so from there, that's where you have the physical assessments. We have, like I said, the assistance of the EDPU and working through our selections committee, which actually is serving a really, really important purpose. And moving forward, even outside of this situation, it's very important because we have added the role of scouts to the selections committee as well. And so these scouts are not only regional, but also working on identifying specific skill sets. And this means that, when we say Trinidad and Tobago, yes, it's Trinidad and Tobago, all of Trinidad and Tobago, right? Having regional scouts means that athletes have a point of contact and the national teams who are working on saying, all right, who's assigned to these areas and when are we going to be in these areas? But they also have that support there as well. So we're really using our community, we're using our numbers to make sure that our infrastructure is sound and safe and sustainable.
Okay. So as training proceeds, everything is behind closed doors, or how we all doing it? Because of the COVID restrictions.
So only the national team
only
is
the
training.
national team.
Yeah, we don't have any club or community activity happening.
Right,
The national team, and this is in preparation for the tournaments.
And,
because the proximity of those tournaments, we have to be in training now to make sure that physically we are able to not just participate, but compete, and in a way that is safe and productive for our athletes.
And I know that you'll get reports from the coaches based on the performance of what's happening. What is the feedback so far with the preparations and everything?
Well, first and foremost, I would address that, the fact that we are not attending the RAN 7s in October definitely is a disappointment, especially when you're looking at athletes who are thinking, great, we have a tournament to go to. And so that's part of what we're considering as well, is making sure that, the communication is such that the athletes understand that there was a process, right?
Yeah.
Because they're working hard, they're doing their job when they're training and coming out and making sure that, their forms are filled out, they have everything that's required for travel, et cetera, those things are their responsibility. And so if they've done that, they've said, okay, yeah, I got vaccinated, all of these different things that contribute to us being able to travel, then of course they want to know why was the decision made and, show us how that was in our best interest. So that's something that I really have to thank the technical teams for, as far as, transitioning into this. Yes, we have to share more information, right? As a community on a whole, we're not together as much. So naturally, there would be less communication. And as an executive, we're looking at different ways. So we have absolutely increased the amount of communication that comes from the executive. And we're looking to do that even more so, as far as having open forums. The Rugby Hub 868 has been a great platform. Meetings are happening every week. So anyone, any committee, any team, anyone can book time through the Rugby Hub 868 and have their meetings and information sessions. And we can engage athletes, we can engage parents, which is very important, and make sure that people have the information and the opportunity to ask the questions that they have.
As you spoke about Rugby 868,
Yes.
let's talk about Rugby 868. What is Rugby 868?
So Rugby 868 is Rugby in Trinidad and Tobago. It's the Rugby Hub 868. And it started off as the online platform, right? Because we identified that we absolutely need a virtual space in which we can connect. We are also using that as a platform to, as was mentioned before, get rugby onto television, right? If we can't play rugby, how can we engage with rugby here? And not only getting rugby on television, but the first project that our group of commentators have is honing in their commentary skills and doing commentary over games that have been played before. So we've selected a series of games, and we've already begun the recordings, so that not only can we watch games that people probably haven't seen before, but also hear the commentary in our own voice. So it's our athletes on the pitch, and the commentators are people who would have more information about the athletes and be able to present the game more intentionally for the audience that we want to reach. We want to reach everyone at home. We want, even if you're not involved in rugby, we want you to be able to identify with a commentator who is, engaging and drawing you into the game. We want you to be able to identify, hey, but I know that person who's playing. Maybe you didn't even know that someone that close to you is playing in rugby. And it's giving that opportunity to showcase our athletes, to showcase our game, and to really work towards, presenting ourselves as a product and a brand.
And how satisfied are you with this whole Rugby 868?
Rugby Hub?
Rugby Hub.
I'm really, really pleased. And I am grateful on so many levels to the entire community, because, it's one thing to make sure that resources are available, but it's people using those resources that makes them valuable, right? And committees have been engaging through Rugby Hub on the virtual platform, and the response from the commentators has been really, really good. So we've already done a training session, right? And this is a group of people who expressed an interest in doing commentary. Because if we want to reach audiences with rugby, right, well, then we have to be recording our games. And not just recording our games, but we have to have commentary. That's what brings the game to life for people who are watching it at home, even for people who are in the stadium, to understand what is happening. What was that call? Who is this athlete? And I think that is so very important for promoting our national teams. And yeah, I would just say thank you to the people who have volunteered. I'm so excited about how the recordings have gone so far, because that energy and that life that we want to bring to rugby and that we're missing so much, that's one of the ways that we're capturing it until we can return and get on the field, record new games.
Okay, sounds good. Let's talk about TagX.
Yes, so TagX is a platform that we want to use for safe return to play, right? It's an excellent training tool, and the national teams are actually looking to implement this in some of their training.
All right. Could you explain to us what it is about?
So TagX is a form of non-contact rugby. If you look at World Rugby, in their strategic plan going into 2025, one of the things that they want to have focused on is non-contact forms of the game. So how do you make rugby accessible to more people? How do you introduce the sport in ways that are safe, and also even as an exit strategy? So non-contact forms of rugby, and we're focusing on the TagX, excellent tool for introducing youth to rugby, right? It can be played co-ed, it can be played across different age grades. When you're looking at rebuilding a community and coming back into being able to play, which we're not able to do yet, but we're setting up the infrastructure for, it's played with fewer numbers, so each team is 10. So some clubs, when they resume, they may say, all right, yeah, well, 10 is that we could put in a team with 10. Clubs that have more membership, they might say, okay, well, we can put in 2 teams. As I mentioned before, we wouldn't resume full contact rugby immediately. And this is a way that we can make sure that the community has an opportunity to gradually and safely return to play. So we have COVID-19 safe return to play, and we have player welfare load passport safe return to play. So rugby is doubled up on player welfare in that regard. One of the other things, while this allows us to resume training in a gradual return to contact as well as with reduced numbers, is TAGX is a format where clubs can not only enter teams, but they can host tournaments, right? They can host tournaments, they can have, of course, when the environment permits, right, concessions, whatever marketing and branding that they do for their own club, they're able to use TAGX as a vehicle to generate revenue. And this is so, so important. We have to give our clubs tools, and we have to support our clubs in raising revenue, right? That is how they're going to support their programs. That's how they're going to be able to support the entire union, right? That base, it comes from our players, it's through our clubs. And everything that we do, if we're not looking after our players and our clubs, then we're not serving our purpose, right? So making sure that that is there as an opportunity, both for participation and for becoming more financially independent, is very, very important.
You mentioned rebranding. What is the new committee vision on rebranding for the
Right.
sport?
So, yes, rebranding has been on the table for some time, but we have actually started to implement certain plans. Part of our strategic plan, which in the past 2 weeks, the executive committee actually went through the entire strategic plan again, just as a measurement tool to say, all right, what of these things are we working on? What of these things still make sense for us? What is the feedback that we've been getting from the community? And it was actually a really good exercise to see how many green notes we could type into the document saying, all right, this is what's being done in this area, right? One of those things is setting up the marketing and sponsorship committee. So of course you have to look at all the projects that are coming out of the executive. How are we going to execute those projects? Who's going to work on them? So through marketing and sponsorship, we're already working on how we're going to implement that change and involve the community in that change. So I don't want to speak too soon. We have a management committee meeting coming up, so they have to hear it first, right? But definitely excited about the plans to involve the community in that. And we also, of course, are looking at different avenues. We have members of the community who have a lot of skills, a lot of resources. I'm very happy to be wearing my new shirt today that I got. It's from Primal, and you know, this is
part of the rebranding?
This is not part of the rebranding.
Okay.
This is for posterity because, you know, we have to remember where we came from.
Okay.
And, you know, everything that we've had in rugby has been built, you know, from this. So I'm so happy that, you know, I actually got the phone call this morning or the message this morning to come and pick this up. And I think it's so important not only that we are able to represent ourselves and the journey that we are on, because of course rebranding is a journey, but also to support the members of our community who are saying, hey, I want to have this resource. This is a great idea. I can facilitate that. And to be able to support that is really, really good. So as an executive, as an individual, of course, I want to support members of our community in their endeavors.
So in the days ahead, we'll hear more about the rebranding process with the rugby union. When you were talking, you mentioned a lot about community, right?
Yes.
What plans do you have, you know, inside of all of this that will benefit the community or see more community coming forward with rugby teams?
So our pilot plan for TAGX is actually about building that community, right? And you can build community through clubs, but also we want to make sure that all of the clubs are part of a community as well, that it's not a set of rivalries, that it's positive competition, and that it's understanding that working together is how we are successful, right? I always say Trinidad and Tobago has such an incredibly diverse rugby community, and that's something that's very exciting about rugby here. And when you go and you talk to the different clubs, you talk to different players, and you hear about their experiences, it's incredibly motivating. Even from today speaking to you, I can say that this community is so strong, so proactive, as far as saying, okay, what can my contribution be? And sometimes it's a positive message. Sometimes it's putting forward an idea. And one of the things I'm really grateful to the new executive for is that everyone is very responsive to these new ideas. And sometimes not even new ideas. Sometimes they may have been presented before, but to saying, all right, we want to hear from the community what the community needs. And it's through that that we are having these opportunities. It's through that that we're able to build. Even though so much of the administration work that's happening right now might not be visible to everyone, I just want to thank the community for making themselves visible to us, because we are working for the community. Without that, we don't have a purpose. And I'm very, very grateful. Of course, when you're campaigning, there's the election, there's all the excitement about it, there's all, you know, everything is in the forefront. And I can say that that has not waned. People have not dropped off because, okay, the election is over, it's finished, we'll see what happens next year. People have continued to engage. They have continued to put their ideas forward. They have continued to contribute, and they're interacting with the executive team on a level that I haven't experienced before, on a level that is saying, you know, yes, this is a union that we can be very, very proud of, and it makes me want to work even harder to make sure that they have every opportunity available.
We need to take a break here, but when I come back, I want to speak now to Maria Thomas, the president, to find out how your 4 months in office was. Is it what you expected? And what are your plans going forward, you know, for the rest of your tour? Because we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back, viewers. Welcome back to Scoreboard and ACT. And if you're now joining us, we are chatting with the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Football Rugby Union, Maria Thomas. And if you miss any part of the program, remember tomorrow there's a repeat at 1 p.m. and also on Saturday. Maria, we have spoke so much about the progress and the teams and all the nice things that's happening with the union. Now, 4 months or so in the presidency chair, how has that experience been for you? What's it like?
Well, I will get to that, George, but because we were just talking about the rebranding,
yes,
you have given me a perfect opportunity to make another point, because
okay,
you keep calling it the Trinidad and Tobago Football Rugby Union.
Yes, is that name changing?
Rugby Football Union.
Okay,
and
right.
I'm glad that I have the opportunity to reiterate that, because part of the rebranding is we want to look and say, people must think of rugby. Football is a very popular sport here, and so when people hear football anywhere within our name, that is what is remembered.
Okay, so what's the proper name now? Trinidad and Tobago?
We are presently the Trinidad and Tobago Rugby Football Union.
Football Union.
Because it's the RFU Rugby Football Union.
Yes.
Right?
My apologies to you and the
I mean,
union.
there's a very interesting history lesson on why it's called that, right? But I know you asked me a different question. But I just wanted to reiterate, because that's something that we're looking at. It's very important that with our brand, people know what sport we are playing, and that is rugby. So that's part of what we're looking at.
So maybe one of these days you all might drop off the football and just use rugby alone.
Well, I mean, then we'd be true. We'd be the TTRU, right?
Yes. So let's get back now to the juicy part here now.
Yes, okay.
What has the 4 months been like for you so far?
So I definitely referred to it a little bit. already as far as from an executive team position, right? It is difficult for me to separate myself as a person from the process and from the role and from the work that needs to be done, right? So it's when you're an athlete and you identify yourself as an athlete, I'm a rugby player, and that's so much of who you are and so much of your daily routine. So for me now, that's transferred into the administration, it's transferred into the governance. I've been able to take, you know, my experiences as a player, and I want to make sure that I keep that close, because that's something where I can say, okay, from a governance standpoint, from an administration standpoint, I can understand the process of a decision. I can understand how many different things, how many components go into something, how many things that we take for granted if we're not aware of those processes. But I remember how it is, and I know how it is to think, okay, but this is what I'm trying to do. As an athlete, I'm trying to play, right? And I think that we can really help our athletes just by including them in processes, right? Just by making information available so that decisions don't seem arbitrary, and that they understand that they are our investment. Like that's our product. That is the game. We need players and we need referees, right? We need administration, we need everything else, but without that, we don't have a product, we don't have anything on the field. And so the personal transition that happens, right? It really is connected with everything that has to do with the TTRFU, right? So I know if I'm on the pitch, this is my role, this is my position, this is my job, this is what I need to do. And it's the same thing that I need to focus on in administration and in governance as far as what is my role now. And so sometimes, definitely, it's a benefit to have the experience as a player. It's a benefit to have the experience as a coach. It's a benefit to have the professional experience that I've had in my life, the master's program that I just finished, the international experience, spending a year in Russia. All of these different things contribute to my perspective. I also have to be clear on what is my role. Because if I look at it from, okay, well, this is just what I want to do from a player perspective, for example, then I'm shortchanging the role that I have to do as president. And sometimes the decisions are not easy, right? That's why I continue to say that transparency and communication, because you have to make sure that people are able to give input where necessary. Our decisions are not made on our own. They're not solitary decisions. We get input from the technical teams, we get input from the government, from the restrictions that are in place, from the opportunities that are there, from people who want to see rugby succeed and want to invest in rugby. So there are so many components that come into it. And then I feel like I'm still answering the question from the union perspective, and that's not what you asked me. But again, it's that consistency that we've had throughout the community, right? I am able to reach out to people every day. People reach out to me every day. And I find that very encouraging. The feedback that we've been getting has been very positive, and it's been positive and it's been constructive, right? And I think that if it's constructive, it is also positive, even if it's something that someone said, hey, why was this done this way? Or I didn't understand this process. The fact that the question is being asked means that we are engaged and we are in communication, which is what has to happen for us to be successful, not only as a union, but as individuals. Because individually, carrying over that player perspective, right, you have to take care of your individual athletes. You have to make sure that physically they're fine. You have to make sure that the procedures in place are things that are reasonable for them to be able to do, as far as like how far do they have to travel, if they're working, like did their day start at 5 in the morning and end at 10 at night, things like that. You know, keeping good mental health practices, that's very important, because when you have strong individuals, then you have a strong team. And that carries over into the administration. And so it's making sure that on the executive team, you know, we check in with each other, how's your workload? What's your week like? How are things going? What kind of assistance would you like? And doing that with the committees, doing that with teams. Who do you need to be connected with? What kind of resources would you like to have? What will make your job easier for you to do, and how will we have positive impact, right? And so as we're doing that as an executive, and as I strive to do that for the community, it's coming back to me.
Okay.
So I will have people who say, yeah, you know what, I will volunteer to do that. Don't worry about that. Yes, I can do this. Listen, I'm going to follow up with you. And it makes things run really smoothly when you have people who are saying, yeah, I'm committed to this. I put my hand up and I am doing it.
Okay.
Here's your report. Here's this. How are you doing?
Okay.
And it's that balance between what is required as individuals and how that impacts what's required from those individuals in their roles.
How difficult it was for you doing all these things with the COVID restrictions in comparison if there wasn't a lockdown or the COVID, you would have had an opportunity to do more. How difficult it was for you, you know?
It's interesting because we plan for the environment we're in.
Okay.
So actually one of the things that definitely changed some of our timelines is when we found out there's this tournament in October. Because knowing what the proposed schedule was at the time, or perhaps not knowing the proposed schedule is a better way to say it, right? We said, all right, we're focusing on administration. We're focusing on the infrastructure. We're focusing on revitalizing these parts that are integral to the union running efficiently, so that when we do have the opportunity to return to play and we have competitions, the infrastructure is there to support the athletes, to support the coaches, support the managers, support the technical program, etc., right? So of course we had to make a shift very quickly and say, all right, these things are set up to this extent. We're going to pause that because we have to look at this opportunity and what do we need to do to make this a reality, right? And it's been a very important process, and we've actually seen so many people stepping up to say, yes, we are here, we do have the means to make things like this happen, right? And it's not the fault of anyone here that we were not attending that tournament. But now we know we have, all right, in February, that's what we're working towards. We now have a longer period of time for athletes to train. We have a longer period of time to make sure people are travel ready. We have a longer period of time to raise funds, because this is something that needs to be done as well. That yes, there are certain subsidies. Yes, we have put in our applications. But when you need to confirm things, you know, we can work for ourselves as well. There are things that we can do to say, you know, let's raise for this team. This is the project we're working on. Engage the community, engage people. There are a lot of people that want to see rugby succeed. And when they see us invest in ourselves, that's inspiring, and we need to do that.
What do you plan, or what do you foresee your remaining time as president would you like to, you know, accomplish or to achieve or to bring to the sport of rugby?
So the foundation of what I had set as a primary goal for this term, or this period that I have been elected for, has been set. And so moving forward, it's just to make sure that that foundation is strong. So going back, checking in with the committees, making sure that the training opportunities are there, making sure that whatever resources are required are there, because that is what is going to strengthen the union, right? Those are the functioning pieces of the union. Those are the people representing the specific expertise required for us to function at the level we need to function. And I think that it is a great accomplishment when we look at the caliber of people that we have volunteering and the amount of expertise that we have, right? Moving forward, when we have a strong functioning foundation for these things and a functioning framework, then when we use these different tools that we have for generating revenue, we can start moving towards more of a business model where we're not dependent entirely on grants and on subsidies, and where we can actually begin to be self-sufficient as far as not only our participation and our competitions, but also saying, listen, these people have contributed so much and their skills are valuable and needed. And if they were in a professional setting, right, they would be paid for those services, right? And so it's moving towards, in the long term, where we have a structure where we are able to compensate people for their time. And I am hopeful that we are able to have a positive environment so that even though people are volunteering now, that we still treat them professionally, that we still make sure that anything that we can provide is there for them. Because when we get into that goal where people are able to be compensated for their work financially, right? I would love to see that it's the people who have volunteered. I would love to see that they are able to be thanked in that way, in a financial way, to say, thank you for sticking with us, thank you for believing in us, thank you for investing in, and when I say us, it's like all of us together, it's investing in ourselves when we put in this time. Because the level of professionalism that we're seeing right now, it's definitely something that we can build on.
Before I let you go, I must talk to you about your plans for your big celebration that is coming up. Yes, how is that going?
So there is a working group that would have updates for us. In addition to that, I've definitely looked at, okay, what are the things that we can do no matter what the situation is, right? So we have timelines set up. Again, we have really cool projects that we've handed over to marketing and sponsorship to facilitate with. And so stay tuned for more news on those things. A lot of it will be coming to you via television because we're grateful for this as a resource to make sure that we can highlight some of the incredible members of our community who have contributed so much to rugby in Trinidad and Tobago before we recorded everything and had, could just go through someone's timeline and see it. So we want to take the opportunity to do a number of interviews. We want to hear people's stories. We want to give people a chance to have their voice heard and to tell us about how this union was built. We are in a huge transitional stage right now. Lots of changes happening, changes that are necessary, changes that people may or may not have been ready for. There are people who have gone through processes like this before. And there is such a rich and exciting and interesting history of rugby in Trinidad and Tobago that is a sure way that we can celebrate, we can honor our history, and we can understand more of where we've come from so that we are empowered now to make the decisions and the changes that are best for the union going forward.
I want to give you a few minutes just to talk to your committee and to the teams, the supporters of rugby, and if there's a message that you want to relay to them.
The message is just one of gratitude, honestly, especially to the executive team, especially to the committees, to the clubs, to the affiliated bodies, to the technical teams, to the athletes. None of this is possible without your participation and all of your input, whether it's something that you're excited to say, hey, let's try this, or something where you were frustrated and said, why was this done this way? All of that is contributing to building the union that is going to represent rugby in Trinidad and Tobago. And it's such an opportunity, it's such an honor to be in this position where I can facilitate that growth. And I just thank everyone for inspiring me every day, The executive team, we meet very often, we're in communication all the time, and we're trying to set that bar for communication to make sure that it reaches everyone in the community.
Maria, thank you very much. It was a pleasure. And I wish you and your executive all the best.
Thank you very much, George.
Because we have come to the end of another edition of Scoreboard here on ACTN, and we want to thank you for staying with us. We want to thank Maria for spending this time and enlightening you on what is happening with the sport of rugby. Remember, tomorrow at 1 p.m. is a repeat, and also on Saturday. Stay tuned. See you next week.
Bye.